Here I go again on my own. Going down the only road I've ever known. We're gonna have to cut that part out. Welcome back to another version of the State of the Private Markets. Yeah, I'm CJ. I'm your host. Once a week, I like to get on here and do some fireside chats, just like FDR used to do back in the day. What I'm going to take you through are all the developments in the private markets over the last month. Yeah, month of March. What's happening? What companies are going to go public? Which companies are on their way to something special here? And so I have some enthralling data from my friends at position.so. And I loop it all into this newsletter that I send out every week at mostlymetrics.com. So let's get to it because there's a lot happening here. IPOs left and right, companies getting scooped up. By the way, did you hear about that company Wiz? Yeah. Um, I kind of came to a sobering realization after scrolling LinkedIn that I think I might be the only person in tech who did not advise Wiz on their $32 billion exit to Google or share this deep spiritual bond with the founders. Wow. Um, I walked into Starbucks and the barista was like, iced coffee for CJ. By the way, I once caffeinated the Wiz guys. It's like, cool, bro. Okay. But behind all the backslapping and congratulatory messages. The deal spirits are real, you guys. I was having lunch with a venture debt banker and he nailed it. He said, despite the market turbulence, I haven't had this much inbound since pre-COVID. The deal spirits are whispering. I love that. I love the vibes. And just the past month was acquired by Google, 32 billion. Ampere Computing snapped up by SoftBank for 6.5. MoveWorks bought by ServiceNow for 2.9 billion. Next Insurance, Weights and Biases, Ninja Trader, the Boston coming out with me, Gretel, Data Stacks, all gone. All of these being scooped up for very large sums of money, all north of what seems to be 300 million, most in the billion-dollar range. It's giving kind of the infrastructure renaissance feelings, not a recession, despite the market getting kind of crushed in the public space over the last couple of weeks. I haven't checked my portfolio because I don't want to see that. And I think we're turning a macro page here. So fun fact, I took out the old calendar in ZIRP, zero interest rate policy. That only lasted about 2 full years. We've now been in the post ZIRP era longer than we've ever been in it. But every single panel that you listen to or podcast, they keep using the benchmark of ZIRP. Like, are we returning to that? It's like that was the anomaly. And actually, it's been a longer period of time being out of it. So let's talk about that big number deal. Did Google overpay for Wiz? So back in July of 2024, Wiz had hit 500 million in ARR. Today, the reports would peg it at about 700 million. So if you assume a 10% haircut for the actual GAAP revenue, because remember, ARR is like an exit balance that you're at, I'd put them at around 630 million. So at a $32 billion valuation, you're looking at about a 30x forward revenue multiple if you assume their growth is still in the 60 to 70% range. Remember, they were growing at 100% year over year. And like that's a rich multiple. The median tech company is trading at just below 6x forward revenue right now. And the top 10 median tech company is at 15x, which we track at mostlymetrics.com. Then you have like the Cloudflares and CrowdStrikes of the world, which are coming up against the 20x forward. So this around 30x, yeah, it's rich. It's not Palantir rich of like spit your coffee out 50x forward, but it is rich. And you got to remember that it's not just ARR, it's synergy ARR for Google. Remember, they have all these customers that they can sell Wiz into. And it's an upgrade to their cloud infrastructure, which they're heavily investing in. So it's not just a software buy, it's an infrastructure upgrade. So let's check in on the most valuable tech companies. Stripe is back in rare air. They're now valued at 91.5 billion, which is up from the 70 billion we last marked them at. And this is nearly back to their 2021 peak. So they're at about 6 billion in revenue, we estimate right now. And that gives you a clean 15x-ish multiple. And that totally checks out if Adyen is trading at about 20x. Remember, Stripe has valuable fintech revenue because it's a blend of subscription revenue and payments. Question: what's the most valuable privately held marketplace in the world? It's not GoPuff, it's not Turo, and it's not even StubHub, who just came out with their S1. They're about to go public. It's OnlyFans. So they have 1.3 billion in revenue. That was back in 2023. So they're probably north of 1.6 at this point. And when they printed that 1.3 billion in revenue, which you can find on UK Customs House because they're headquartered over in the UK, they had 658 million in pre-tax profits. So that platform continues to print money. and they're not going to IPO anytime soon. Speaking of IPOs, though, Klarna officially is going public, and Chime might be next, riding the tailwinds from a friendlier regulatory tone in DC, because the new presidential administration seems to have control alt deleted the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So that's a major tailwind to companies who operate in a highly regulated financial space. I want to talk about hiring for a sec. Who's scaling? Who's shrinking? So we all know that tech's biggest line item is people. Over 70% of SaaS spend is headcount. And so using positions data, here are the fastest growers among private companies with both 500 plus employees and over 500 million raise. XAI, 1,451% headcount growth. Perplexity, 844% year over year headcount growth. Anyscale, Inflection, and Mistral AI are also scaling aggressively. So AI is clearly in this new talent grab. But one curveball here is Poppy, the soda startup. They grew 121% year over year. And this is just a reminder that consumer brands can still scale headcount just as fast when they hit distribution escape velocity. And that's why they just got snapped up by PepsiCo, for about $2 billion. Now, on the flip side, you could tell in Klarna's S1, they've cut headcount for the last 3 years straight. They've also cut sales and marketing costs and customer support costs. And they've been citing AI efficiencies, but they have seen their headcount decline for 3 straight years, despite revenue growing over 20%, which is impressive. And then OutSystems and Aqua Security are two other high brand names that have had some contraction in headcount after sky high valuations in 2021. Both of them had a bit of a correction there. Some sector spotlights that I picked out for you. So there's kind of the what do I call it? The Maslow's hierarchy of needs of rich guy stuff. So the first thing is you're rich enough to go and buy a horse for yourself or your wife. The second one is you're rich enough to go and buy a restaurant so you can go and hang out, because restaurants are a terrible business to be in. You can go and hang out with all your friends. You can be the guy in Cheers. The next version of this is you buy a private island. Won't tell you what goes on those private islands, but and then finally you go to space and you just buy a rocket ship company to go there. And Eric Schmidt is now the CEO of Relativity Space, because when you're ultra wealthy, that's just, that's self-realization. Buy a rocket company. He basically did a hard recap on his own. In the procurement space, we're checking on Ramp. They're evolving really fast. They're now at a $13 billion full stack spend platform. Wow. And that was off of a $150 million secondary that they just did. And then Zip is also doing some big things. They're at a $2.2 billion valuation and 41% headcount growth. Vendor, on the other hand, who had led the way originally with negotiation as a service, they've been shrinking. I think that the outsourced SaaS buying may be facing a reckoning. And a lot of people are saying, is this more labor arbitrage than anything here? It shouldn't get a SaaS multiple. On the productivity side, I've been taking a look at the companies like Airtable, Notion, Coda, and Grammarly in particular is pivoting from the Grammar Cop to an AI native suite. And they acquired Coda about 2 months ago, which is interesting. OpenAI did erode a lot of their moat. And then Airtable is quiet and efficient. They seem to continue to grow there. They have under 1,000 employees, but their valuation is north of 10 billion. And then Evernote is quiet, period. I think I have an Evernote, I think the application is somewhere on one of my computers, and I probably do have some notes back from like my first year at PwC that I should brush up on. That's your tension. Company spotlights. Plaid. Their valuation is down from 13 billion to 6 billion in recent secondary activity, but their revenue is still strong. We estimate they're over 400 million as of March, and I look at it as becoming the AWS of financial data pipes. They're durable. It's a little bit boring, but it's definitely strategic and needed. And if you remember, Visa tried to acquire them for about 5 billion in 2021. They said no thanks, and their valuation on the backs of that shot up to 13 billion. Now they're back down to 6 billion, but it's still a healthy multiple for the type of revenue that they are moving and acquiring. Figma, still worth 13 billion, but this time it is very much earned. So another acquisition story that didn't go through, but a company growing into the multiple. So Adobe tried to acquire them for 50x forward revenue. Yeah. But now their revenue seems to be approaching 1 billion by next year. So after that deal fell through, I think people were like, wow, 50x forward. That's pretty crazy. Figma doubled down on product, and it is paying off. So they've grown into that multiple in a lot of ways. then Rippling, they raised at 14 billion, heading towards 1 billion in revenue as well. And that crazy story, I mean, I won't recap the entire thing here, but Deal allegedly planning a mole in their ops. And then the whole honeypot Slack channel. Whenever someone describes a story as, oh, you got honeypotted, I'm instantly drawn to it. It's a funny term. And it's like, oh, how'd you catch him? And I just think that the funniest part of this whole thing is that the mole was trying to delete the evidence from a bathroom and allegedly tried to flush his phone down the toilet. And this is over in Dublin at the Rippling office. And I heard from a friend that they tried to dredge the sewage pipes to try to get the phone out, but they couldn't find it. So that's crazy if you think about like poop running through the streets to try to get some guy's phone. Corporate espionage in the HR space. It doesn't get richer than that. Some executive moves that we've been keeping track of. Greg Henry, he joined 1Password as CFO after taking Couchbase public a number of years ago. Friend of the pod, great guy. Dan Chen lands at Gemini after leading capital markets at Affirm. And John Verkamp becomes CFO at Wheels Up. I cannot afford a private jet, but John, if you want to become a sponsor of the pod, we'd love to do that, because flying private sounds pretty awesome right now after my recent Spirit Airlines flight to Naples, Florida. All right, so that's a wrap on this month's State of the Private Markets. A big thanks to everybody who tunes in. And if you like these solo episodes, just give me a shout. Let me know. Give it 5 stars. I'm very vain in that way. I tell my mom every time I talk to her on the phone how many 5 stars I have. I love you all. Peace.